Follow the buzzer. Rest in peace. Woo! The best there is, the best there was, and the best ever will be. What you gonna do, brother? Hey, yo.
Can you see me now?
Strategy my Oklahoma ass.
Life sucks, and then you die.
Welcome to the JM Report. I'm your host, GoodOlJM, and this is episode 55, coming to you from CSB Studios in Tampa, Florida, birthplace of pro wrestling on this, 420, April 20th, 2019. And in case you're wondering, yes, I am a day late. That's only because I was conducting an interview on my usual time slot. If you head over to my YouTube channel, you will see I have a brand new Talking with JM episode with Keshma Maharaj, a nice, lovely lady, bodybuilder. Had a nice little chat for a couple hours, getting to know who she is, what she's doing now, and what the future holds. So if you haven't already, go check it out. Talking with JM, episode 3 with Keshma. Now then, I'm a little, let's just say a lot's happened in the past 24 hours. We had a little storm here that lasted for a few. Matter of fact, during the interview with Keshma, there was a huge storm that affected the entire East Coast. Even though we had the short tail end of it that lasted maybe for about, I would say, 3 hours. But during that time, I was in the studio where the lights flickered at least twice. And had that happen, the whole process, the whole interview would have been disastrous, and we would have had to reschedule and probably miss out on some good studio time. But thankfully, nothing like that happened. But little car trouble, so it's in the shop right now, and let's just say I'm using a loaner, and the show must go on, I guess. But I just literally just came from getting the loaner and heading to the studios, and here I am. But enough about me. Had an interesting Monday and Tuesday night, and so many shuffling of the cards, if you will. They call it whatever they want, but I'm still sticking to the draft. I mean, how many times can you, quote, shake things up? Well, if you're a WWE fan, and you probably know that they want to do that at least once a year. And occasionally, in between one year into the other, they will so slightly shake things, maybe more like rattle things up when they make a switch, or somehow we're realizing that there's someone else showing up on the show that wasn't originally scheduled or even drafted, if you will. But for the past few years, every time we came across a draft, it kept changing as far as presentation goes. And I believe the first one was in 2002 with Ric Flair and Vince McMahon, co-owners of the WWE, or kayfabe. And they will come out on stage, and this is when Raw was 2 hours. Come on stage and just name random people that they choose to join their TV show or their brand of either Raw or Smackdown. And there were at least 2 occasions where they literally rapid fired names. And by the end of the night, we had about maybe 20 each. And the rest of the draft took place on WWE.com, or at the time, WWF.com. And according to the latest episode of Something to Wrestle with Bruce Pritchard, they legit would not tell the superstars where they're going because Vince apparently wanted everything to be as authentic as possible. So for those of you who remember when JR was drafted to SmackDown right on the fly in exchange for some other guy, I forgot his name, on the air, Jim Ross literally just got up from his Raw table, his announce desk, and walked over to the other guy's table and took his headset. And that other guy apparently didn't know, just basically swapped chairs. And Mr. Ross was apparently very upset about this. I know a lot of people were asking, well, what's the difference? It's just a different day of the week. Well, for all we know, Jim Ross could have had his daily routine or schedule, if you will, set up between Mondays and Tuesdays. So whatever he had set up for that Tuesday that did not involve heading to the arena or rehearsals or anything like that, now he's got to reschedule whatever he had plans for that week and head over to the SmackDown arena. And I thought it was interesting and, you know what, true to life, because these drafts, whether it's in basketball and football or in this case WWE, it should be that way, I believe, and that's not so much to, well, maybe it is, but not to the degree people think. But if it's to avoid spoilers or things leaking online, that's probably the furthest thing from the top 2 or 3 reasons. But I think at least one or the first or second reason would have to be to get that genuine reaction. And I think it's a good idea. Not rare do you see me agree with these people on their ideas, but I think it's a good move. It's worked, keeping a lot of people in the dark, so to speak. But depends how much in the dark you keep them in, or just not say anything at all to literally last minute. But I'll have an example of that later on, just touching up from one of last week's stories regarding Sasha Banks and Bayley. So Raw and SmackDown took place in Montreal, Quebec, and they had a draft. It wasn't the days after WrestleMania, but the week later, and quite a few interesting swiping of the talent, a couple of breakups, unfortunately, of sub teams, and a name change that when I get there, and it won't take long, I'll have my little gripes about it, but I will refuse to refer them to whatever name they gave them. So, Raw opens up with Stephanie, and I guess she was spared these stories of travel issues, apparently. Some superstars, if you didn't get to see or hear of them on Raw or SmackDown, apparently, and this was never confirmed, but apparently some of them had issues traveling into Montreal. Take that for what it's worth. She then introduces her brother Shane, and the crowd starts chanting loudly, CM Punk. Now, personally, never say never, as they say, but not anytime soon. Even if the money was right, hell, even if the money was right and doubled, I don't think Mr. Brooks is going to budge as far as considering returning to the WWE. And this is just my take on it personally. All the chants ever since he left, all the chants, all the cries out for him for returning to reconsider. Then came the UFC announcement. Even then, people were still chanting his name to come back after his first fight. And it's not going to happen. I mean, at this point, it just doesn't make any sense. And he's not coming back. And again, I know never say never. But after nearly 5 minutes, these two went over the rules as far as how the draft is going to be worked, as if we don't already know. Bottom line, anyone is eligible. And they've proven this fact once. And it was even talked about on the Something to Wrestle podcast that general managers could be drafted. So it was Paul Heyman. I remember this. I thought it was hilarious how Heyman was drafted to Raw, and he was the Smackdown GM, only for him to quit because he didn't want to work under Eric Bischoff's regime of Raw. So, of course, reinforcing that everyone's eligible. Teams can be broken up, factions and whatnot. Same show, just different image. And, of course, this is all in Daddy's hands. Vince is going to say who goes where. So just as Stephanie was about to announce the first draft to Monday Night Raw, The Miz sneak attacks Shane after his music hits, and he comes through the crowd from behind. And these two just get into a brawl. Stephanie just literally evaporates into thin air. We don't see how she escaped. Shane and Miz end up on the outside of the ring by the security wall, the railing. And all of a sudden, Shane makes a comeback, throwing out these jabs and short punches to the gut, to the head, and eventually throwing The Miz over the railing as he lands on the concrete. Shane steps back, and he tries to move in on The Miz, and The Miz pops up like a whack-a-mole, and he has a steel chair in his hand, and he starts smacking around Shane with it. But we noticeably realize that The Miz is bleeding from the left side of his temple. Now, we don't see how exactly The Miz landed when he was flipped over the railing, and for all we know, he could have landed on something. However, considering, and if you go back and watch these jabs from Shane, some of them were connecting, and it wouldn't surprise me if Shane found that sweet spot and busted Miz wide open, because for a long time people were pointing out the fact how unrealistic Shane's punches were. His rabbit punches and his jabs and his little nudging of his fists. I guess he took some lessons, saw a punching bag and actually made contact with it, and such treated The Miz like one, and busted him wide open. And this added more fuel to the fire. It wasn't clear if the feud is going to continue from SmackDown to Raw, which wouldn't surprise me since there aren't any authority figures. And that's probably one of the best things to come out of all this draft, that there weren't any authority figures, even though they try to do that here in the beginning where a authority figure was trying to introduce a new talent. But ever since then, it was just like, nope, let them just appear and have the announcers mention that, well, there's a new member coming to the Raw SmackDown, to the Raw roster or to the SmackDown roster when we come back. And that's one of the major changes that they had in presentation ever since the original draft back in 2002. And I called it last week that we'll probably get a better idea during or after the shakeup or the draft, where Ricochet and Aleister Black, they kept using the name graphic of NXT every time they appeared when they first debuted on the main roster up until post-WrestleMania. And they are now official members of Monday Night Raw, Ricochet and Aleister Black, as they take part in a 8-man tag team match, teaming up with the Raw Tag Team Champions, Zack Ryder and Curt Hawkins, taking on former tag team champions of the Revival and the debuting War Raiders. Yes, I'm fully aware that it is not what they're calling them anymore. They even changed their individual names, but I am sticking with Hanson and Rowe. They used to be known as War Machine, and then when they signed with NXT, they became the War Raiders. Now they're called something else. So unless the Berserker is going to return to be their manager or something, I do not like this name change. I know I'm not the only one because this blew up all over social media. Hanson and Rowe, they can't say so much about it. They have their marching orders, and their job now is to basically butter up their fans. And come on, guys, this is our name now, basically. But I'm personally, I'm not biting. It is what it is. And they were currently NXT Tag Team Champions, minus their physical championship belts, did not appear on Raw, which I question, unless they couldn't make it through customs. But they're not here, the title belts. So at the end, we see War Raiders and the Revival victorious over the Raw Tag Team Champions and Ricochet and Aleister Black after Hanson and Rowe hit their fallout on Zack Ryder for the pin. So at this point, we're just going to be shown, as I mentioned earlier, who are the ones that are being drafted to beat Show. As in between matches or commercials, if you will, we are shown a graphic of Cedric Alexander from 205 Live has been drafted to Raw. Either they didn't have anything for him creatively, or he might have been the ones of this alleged traveling issues. And it was also mentioned, because of said alleged traveling issues, that a lot of Raw and SmackDown had to be rewritten, but mostly Raw because it's a 3-hour show. Next up, we see Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor make his way to the ring, all decked out in blue, and I even shared this on a personal chat. Hopefully this is not foreshadowing anything, but I digress. At the same time, I still put nothing past WWE, as he took on another new member of Raw, Andrade, and he came along with Zelina Vega. So no team there. This team is not broken up. Plus, Aleister Black and Zelina, who are real-life husband and wife, can travel together. These two had a great match. I dare say a classic back-and-forth non-title match, but easily could have been a feud after the Andrade-Rey Mysterio feud didn't pan out exactly for whatever reasons, even though it was going great. But Creative stepped in a few weeks before WrestleMania and changed everything. And Rey Mysterio ended up getting injured a week before, so there you go. But Andrade will get the surprising win after Zelina performed a hurricanrana off the apron to Finn Balor while he was on the arena floor. And once he was thrown back in by Andrade, received the hammerlock DDT and got the pin. Elias was set to perform and talking about how he's been interrupted, how bad the people of Quebec are, and this got a huge boo. And even Elias taking a shot about Quebec not making it to the Stanley Cup Finals or playoffs. This was a similar reaction to he and Kevin Owens got when they were in Seattle talking about the Supersonics. And this did not let up for a few minutes. So Elias begins to, or attempted to, play his guitar, only to be interrupted by the newly acquired Rey Mysterio to Monday Night Raw as they brawl out for a few. Eventually, Elias would avoid the 619 and walk alongside the staging and ramp area to go backstage. So as Rey's posing and celebrating his little interruption, because it's a thing now apparently, Lars Sullivan makes his way to the ring, and a little hint, if you will, as far as making people where they're going and if they're going to be a part of a specific brand, was a name graphic. And interestingly enough, Sullivan again did not have a name graphic, as at this time he was considered a free agent. But he attacks Rey Mysterio, delivering the freak accident, and eventually his running sit-out powerbomb, leaving poor Rey left out in the cold. Bobby Roode and Chad Gable were announced as the Usos. No, I'm just kidding. But they were in the ring, Roode and Gable were. And speaking of name graphics, it popped up while they were in the ring being announced. And instead of their names, the Usos' names appeared. Oops. I'm pretty sure McMahon was PO'd, not to mention whoever was running the production truck and just pushed the wrong button to pop up the name graphic with the proper name. But only the people at home saw this. I couldn't tell. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. I guess depending on how they feel the day of. But when it comes to the Jumbotrons of the arena, if they're not already showing the Titantron entrance video, then they're actually showing what the TV audience is seeing. And they could have seen the name graphic displayed wrong. Point being, that would have given away the spoiler. But Chad Gable and Bobby Roode are introduced, and the commentators, either the commentators were meant to say these guys are about to take on a new acquired tag team from SmackDown. They were silent and just waited for the music to hit. Everybody realizing who they were. No name graphic necessary because we knew it was the Usos, and they made their way to the ring. And the match itself was pretty good. And at the end, it took a double body splash to hit on Chad Gable as the Usos win their first match on Raw. I believe this is the first time ever that they've been on Raw as far as members of the roster. They've always been on SmackDown. They will make occasional appearances on Raw as far as a special attraction or event, or in some cases are probably leading up to Survivor Series or something like that. But I think this is the first time they're on Raw as part of a draft. Before, yes, they were before with the face paint and the war chants. But at that time, they weren't really doing drafts or split brands or anything like that. Everyone was jumping back and forth, or in some cases appear on both shows. So I wouldn't count that, but here we are. So much for not having no more of a Moment with Bliss talk show. After last week, you would think Alexa Bliss will head back into the ring to continue her in-ring work. But again, there might have been some changes as far as the rewrites and people having traveling issues. But we get a Moment of Bliss here. And her special guest was Sami Zayn, hometown boy, who gets a huge reaction, a huge pop, so much that his theme song ended up playing about 3 times. And each time the fans would have different chants, including the old soccer chant. And he was just drinking it all in, man. And he turns heel on them. Saying that he was so glad that he finally moved out of Quebec. It's not the city, it's the people that suck. And he's happily living in sunny Orlando, Florida. Didn't have much else to say because he just simply got up because the fans wouldn't let up on their boos as Sami Zayn just stood up and walked away. Not one question from Alexa as she just sat there. Pretty much the same reactions we all had at home. Like, really? That's it? He's going to walk away. Women's tag team champions of Peyton Royce and Billie Kay, the Iconics, take on Billie and not Sasha Banks as she will have a surprise tag team partner. And in kayfabe, we saw earlier on in the day that Bayley was trying to reach out to Sasha, who apparently was still on vacation, that Sasha was not taking any of Bayley's calls, or anyone's call for that matter, as the Iconics will be seen mocking Bayley about that. And Bayley challenged them to a match later on, and she will find a new partner. And did she find one indeed in Naomi, who's been drafted to Raw? So yet again, we have another husband and wife duo not broken up, as Naomi and Jimmy, I believe it's Jimmy, who are married, and they're going to still get to travel together, which is a good idea. You know, no sense of breaking up a married couple. But at the end, we see the baby faces of Bayley and Naomi defeat the women's tag team champions in a non-title match. So besides WrestleMania, are these things ever going to be defended? If anything, they, for the most part, kept to their word about these titles brand jumping. And only one appearance on NXT. They made more appearances on Raw than they have SmackDown. And every time the former champions of Bayley and Sasha appeared on SmackDown as champions, they lost. So I'm not saying every single match should be for the title. You know, I'm not saying for them not to brand jump. If anything, they should be having multiple feuds, if anything. Now that the Iconics are the champions, they can feud with just about every single member of the women's division on both brands, as we'll get into later. And since they're heels, even though I think they're adorable heels, and they can get away with just about anything, and they have so far, you know, to just constantly dodge bullets, but still have them in tag team defenses. Or title defenses, but I just don't understand what the issue was ever since Sasha and Bayley won the titles back at Elimination Chamber, that they only defended them once. Maybe at live events, well, that's one thing, but who really counts them? And as I get into more details and more updates as far as the whole Sasha Banks situation later on, maybe I could shed some light on it, but I seriously doubt it. Either way, it's just my take. EC3 makes his way to the ring, and he is officially announced as a member of the Raw roster. So here's another individual. He supposedly brand jumped for a little while, but you wouldn't know unless you follow Main Event on the WWE Network. Now, for those who don't know, Main Event is pre-taped before Raw goes on the air. And those matches would eventually land on the network. But here's the problem. For some reason, they don't appear on the network for nearly a month after the fact. Just yesterday, just out of curiosity, browsing around about 2019 episodes of Main Event, because unless you follow the network that much, you'll never know about Main Event still being not only lack of advertising, but still being uploaded. I thought after 2017 that they were done, because back then they were at least mentioned, or don't forget to tune in to Main Event for more WWE action from this week or whatever. The same way they advertise 205 Live, which takes place after Smackdown. Only difference there, it requires you to stay up like an hour later. But why? Here's my question. It's the same company. They own their own streaming network. Why can't they go live on the network like they used to do when they had those what do they call it, Raw Talk or whatever the hell that thing was called for half an hour? Instead of using up that airtime for that, they could have used that for Main Event. Main Event used to be live for a while on what was it, ION, but on Wednesdays I believe it was, and they stopped doing that concept. Then it might have disappeared for a while, so that's Saturday Morning Slam. But okay, it's back now. Main Event, it's been back apparently, and they have all these matches. Pretty much people you haven't seen and question why aren't they on Raw more often. They're on Main Event. Lucha Underground, Apollo Crews, Lacey Evans, EC3, and among many others. Hell, even Rezar, remember him? He's been on Main Event with Drake Maverick. And they're having matches that pretty much should be having matches on Raw, because EC3 had a great match back in March with Apollo Crews. Great match, even though the entire Main Event hour was only two matches. But you know what? They could still do that same. They could do the same darn thing pre-Monday Night Raw on the network to draw numbers, to draw customers in. I mean, yeah, it'll be a 4-hour show technically speaking, but how would that be any different than the pay-per-views you've been spewing out, adding up to 4 or 5 hours, even though they've leaned back a little bit with it? But WrestleMania was nearly 8 hours with the kickoff show. You can still keep some of these people that we never see on a bigger stage compared to their network on the USA Network, and stop asking questions. Why aren't they using them? Why aren't these guys having matches? Well, they kind of stuck it to us quietly. And I was like, well, it turns out you don't follow the network, do you? Otherwise, you would have known that they've been having matches for the past few months on Main Event, and we just happened to upload their matches a month later. So, to each his own, I guess. But it just doesn't make any sense. To me, had they done this on a regular basis where they keep them more relevant by mentioning, tune into Main Event tonight, or hell, make it a weekend show. Tune into Main Event at 12 o'clock Eastern on Saturday and watch all the superstars from Raw and or SmackDown compete. Wasn't that the whole idea of Main Event in the first place, even before they started considering drafts again? But yeah, no, I'm dwelling on this way too much, and it just does not make sense at all. So yes, EC3 apparently issued a open challenge to anyone. But right before this happens, we once again see the cardboard box with the whack-a-buzzard, I guess, that pops out, looks around, starts laughing. Kind of reminded me of, for those who follow or used to watch Married with Children, and Al Bundy got hit in the head. He thought he saw God, and God told him to make these shoes. And he goes on the show called Scary Mary, who apparently is just a sock puppet. And its reactions when it's looking at Al, it's like, so you saw God, huh? And the puppet looks at the camera and looks back at Al like he was crazy or something. Anyway, I just caught flashbacks of that. Every time this buzzard pops out, he just looks around, looks all confused, and just starts laughing uncontrollably. So, yeah, more than likely, this is probably Bray Wyatt returning sometime soon. So back to EC3. He's in the ring. He's posing. He's waiting for his opponent. And out comes Braun Strowman to answer the challenge. And this was literally a squash match. EC3 was fed to the wolves here. The match never really got underway as Strowman tossed EC3 out to the outside of the ring and made it up the rampway to the staging area where he's just being tossed around left and right like a rag doll. And eventually, Strowman would chokeslam EC3 through this little gap area between the announce desk and the staging area on the floor. Turns out the floor was made out of styrofoam and other soft materials, and EC3 was done. Once again, Strowman rips off his shirt, showing off his new physique. And this will segue into the following segment, but nitpick here, and yeah, big surprise, JM nitpicking. Okay, EC3 was squashed, buried with compost, whatever. If you're trying to hide the illusion that EC3 was not literally thrown through plywood or cement or drywall or whatever that little plank was supposed to be made out of, then I suggest you rehearse this a little more often and have better camera angles, because there was one cameraman who was off the stage on floor level with the arena looking up to see Strowman chokeslam EC3 through the floor. And as all of the particles and materials and whatnot pop up and fly around, on one of the corners, the closest to the cameraman, you can see the styrofoam or the cushions or the marshmallows, whatever the hell that thing was made out of. But it's not definitely something you use to make a floor. And the reaction to the cameraman immediately was not to zoom in, but he power walked towards getting a reaction from Braun Strowman. And then they had a wide shot. And then it was back to a close-up with a more steady scene of Strowman. And thankfully, they never replayed that particular angle because it gave away the illusion. Now, I'm not saying to set up a concrete center block floor and chokeslam anyone through it. I know safety precautions are taken. I'm not saying WWE is that, just bloodthirsty to put their talent in harm's way like that. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that they don't even practice it. But when it comes to delivery, when it comes to presentation, you got to be better than this. And they supposedly have producers and directors that have had years in the business, not only in wrestling, but in TV. Hey, believe it or not, WWE is a TV show. Hence why they keep jockeying us about it's entertainment, or whatever. Among other things, the entertainment suck. And again, it's not about putting them in harm's way, but I think too many times people that are from outside of the business have exposed many secrets, and to the credit of WWE as a whole, they've pretty much not touched it with a 10-foot pole. Like, well, whatever, they gave out a secret, sure, good for them. We're moving on. Hence why we're entertainment. what would you have us do? To actually have someone tied up in the car and only to have them be run over by a cement truck and not face the consequences, any and all consequences, if something were to happen to that superstar that was tied up inside the car? They rehearsed other things such as entrances and of course camera angles. Now, in all fairness, that little styrofoam that popped up unexpectedly was not part of the rehearsal, was unexpected, and just caught them by surprise. And of all the times for that little piece to pop up, it was on a live portion of it, and now a lot of people are seeing it. And yes, I'm probably the only one that's pointing this out here. And let me see if I can ruin another one for you. If you ever watched the Karate Kid, the original one with Ralph Macchio and Pat Morita, the scene, it's in the morning, the scene where Mr. Miyagi comes out of his shed, his little apartment there, and to the background, right-hand side, you see Daniel walking up saying, "Good morning, Mr. Miyagi." And they little chit-chat there for a while. They're in front of the truck they're about to drive. But as they're about to get into the truck on the passenger side, if you look right before they start walking that direction, there's a boom mic. Now, unless there's a director's cut or some kind of special edition coming out soon, they would digitally remove that boom mic. But it's there. It's right when the passenger door is open for Daniel and Miyagi to slide in, and then they drive off. So there are literally YouTube channels devoted to that kind of mistakes. There are picture frames, there are slow motion videos, the whole nine. And this is no different. And I'm pretty sure, not that I've seen one, besides Botchamania videos, I haven't seen any YouTube channel, for instance, that would point out specific times where you see, this was the live shot, and they gave away the illusion. Just like Shane McMahon crashing and burning at WrestleMania from Dallas, where he fell through the announce table. Well, actually, he didn't fall through it. He landed on it, and there was a crash pad underneath it. Just have better angles, guys. And if you know the live shot caught it, don't replay it again. Moving on. So this segued, as I mentioned before, as Strowman was there posing, looking over the carcass of EC3, the Unified Women's Champion, Becky Lynch, 2 belts. Becky 2 belts, Becky champ, whatever you want to call her, heads away to the ring as she's about to have a match with Ruby Riott one-on-one. But right before this happens, we learn that Eric Young is heading to Raw. So Sanity becomes the first faction, if you will, to be broken up because of the draft. Regardless, Becky defeats Ruby here with the disarmer, and she fights off the rest of the Riott Squad and starts posing. Backstage is Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, and Baron Corbin talking about their main event 6-man tag team match later on versus Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and a yet-to-be-named opponent that was drafted from Smackdown. This segues back into the ring where Becky Lynch is still celebrating, and out comes Natalya, who right there challenges Becky for the Raw Women's title specifically. As to me, this sounds like eventually Becky's going to drop one of these belts, and it would make sense in a way where she'll be involved in whatever title defense she's up next, maybe at Money in the Bank against ? Where both titles are on the line. But since she's brand jumping and the focus is on one champion in the women's division, just like there's one pair of women's tag team champions, so they can brand jump as well. So for the time being, until they figure this out, or maybe they have and it just doesn't make sense, that whomever is the challenger next for Becky will be facing against whichever brand they come from. And I'll get into that in just a minute. So as Natalya makes her way to the ring, she challenges Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title because She's the best there is, best there was, and you know the rest. And the crowd did not react to that. Did you notice there was no reaction whatsoever up to that point? The title was well received, but once she made her references and slogans that were first used by Bret Hart, her uncle, no reaction. So what happens next? Lacey Evans pops up on stage, announcing that she's officially a member of Raw. Yay. And came straight from the McMahon's office saying that she can challenge Natalya, where the winner will receive a title shot versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's title. And surprise, surprise, Lacey Evans wins the match, and she will receive a Raw Women's title matchup yet to be determined, more than likely at Money in the Bank. But I'm sure we'll get more information by this Monday night on Raw. Now, I got to get used to seeing the Universal title on Raw moving forward, as it was held hostage for so many years. We see another vignette with a dollhouse, bunch of little figures, stuffed animals, and then a rocking chair that was holding this creepy doll sitting facing the camera, wearing, best I could tell, was a black wedding dress. And it started laughing, but it sounded more like a voice box laughing like Bray Wyatt, like the Vulture or Buster from earlier. And the eyes glowed, and they cut away. So, are they trying to say that not only Bray Wyatt is returning, but for real this time, we're bringing back, or I try for the first time, bring in Sister Abigail? The original plan was for Bray to be in drag, taking on the demon Finn Balor more than a year ago. And it was due to illness and sickness, Bray had to be taken out of the match, and it was exchanged by AJ Styles at the time, who both had a tremendous match right before Survivor Series. And so we never got to see Sister Abigail. It was referenced maybe a few more times after that, but never happened. And it was basically similar to what the doll looked like here, pale skin and with, what do you call that? The veil over the face. So my bigger question is Bray going to try this again in drag, or did they find a female talent to play Sister Abigail? Either way, I seriously doubt the Wyatt family will reunite anytime soon. And I'll get into that later as well. Drew McIntyre, Baron Corbin, and Bobby Lashley are in the ring as it's time for the main event, taking on Roman Reigns and Universal Champion Seth Rollins. And who would it be to join 2/3 of the former Shield? AJ Styles, former WWE Champion, drafted to Raw from Smackdown. And the match itself was pretty good, ending up with AJ Styles hitting a phenomenal forearm onto Lashley to get the win. And the draft will continue on SmackDown the very next night. Still in Montreal, SmackDown kicks off with the Kevin Owens show, as his guests were WWE Champion Kofi Kingston and Xavier Woods. And they immediately, well, by day, I mean Kevin Owens, immediately points out Big E is not with him, as he is at home nursing a knee injury and will be out for a few weeks. But Owens offered to become an honorary member of the New Day named Big O. He had the hips gyration and everything, so he's semi-qualified. And this is after it was announced that there was going to be a tag team match main event between 2/3 of the New Day taking on Rusev and Shinsuke Nakamura. And apparently they've been watching this whole time. And Cesaro steps into frame, and he's kind of has this intriguing look on his face and offers to join Rusev and Shinsuke and turn this to a 6-man tag team match. So apparently Cesaro has some authority. And sure enough, on the fly, after the first commercial, it was changed from a tag team match into a 6-man tag team match much later on. And we are introduced to the first or the newest member of the Smackdown draft, and it's the Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor. So apparently he did foreshadow wearing the blue attire on Monday Night Raw, as he's wearing it again here on SmackDown, as he has now moved up to the brand, taking on Mustafa Ali, and these two had a great match. Great, not quite as similar as the night before with Andrade. I think the styles were different between Andrade and Ali, obviously, because this was more of, I guess, athletic aerial match between the two, and rarely was there a dull moment, if ever. But these two had a great match, but at the end, Finn Balor was victorious after hitting the coup de grace and showed great sportsmanship by shaking Ali's hand and maybe have a feud later on. So we see Big O, who needs to prove his worthiness by attempting to break the record previously held by Big E in eating a stack of pancakes in under 5 minutes. So as that is going on, Carmella and R-Truth are heading to the ring as Carmella goes one-on-one with Charlotte Flair. And after that introduction, we go back to Owens and see that he beat the record. He's given a new T-shirt and rechristened with the unicorn horn as it was given to him back in the ring as an honorary member of the New Day. And we'll see them much later on. But back in the ring, Carmella would tap out to Charlotte Flair's figure 8, and she leaves the ring surprisingly. Normally she'll stay around longer to pose and glow and all that, but I guess because R-Truth was ringside. But the real reason was because Lars Sullivan would make his way to the ring and just beat the living holy crap out of R-Truth. Carmella was frozen in fear while she was even attending her knee. The referee slowly helped her out and she will limp away. But R-Truth was still in the ring as he received a freak accident and the running sit-down powerbomb for good measure. And Lars Sullivan is a force to be reckoned with. And even to this point was still considered to be a free agent. Okay. Now, this has really nothing to do with SmackDown, but the fact that Becky Lynch has been walking around saying Becky 2 belts, very similar to how Conor McGregor was doing a couple of years ago. Now, I don't know if Conor had ever trademarked that phrase, 2 belts, probably because it's a different name, but the term 2 belts, referring to yourself as a double champion in different weight divisions, or in Becky's case, just 2 different rosters, really. Same division, but 2 different rosters, different brands. They have yet to come out with T-shirts for Becky. And I hope, I'm sure they're good friends and everything, but I hope there aren't going to be any royalty issues if Becky's T-shirts, if Becky 2-belt T-shirts or Champ is successful and that Conor McGregor is not getting any finder's fee for it, but whatever. So Becky 2 belts comes on and basically announces to the SmackDown roster, but the women's division in general, that she's going to accept anyone's challenge if they're willing to step up. And we get our first glance at the newest member of the women's division on SmackDown, is Ember Moon, making a TV return from injury, even though she appeared at the Women's Battle Royal at WrestleMania a couple of weeks ago. So she's there to challenge Becky. But before Becky could respond, out comes Bayley, who we just saw the night before, and now she's on SmackDown, and she's challenging Becky Lynch for the SmackDown Women's title. But then come out the Iconics, the Women's Tag Team Champions, to interrupt. They're talking that shite, talking their trash, claiming that their titles are more iconic than whatever Becky is carrying. But then out comes Paige, and she was about to introduce the tag team that she was teasing a week before that would challenge the Iconics for the women's tag team titles. Surprisingly, not Ember, but Mandy Rose and Sonya Deville come out. And if you saw Paige's reaction, you immediately knew that this was not the team that she was talking about, as the assumption was that Paige, I guess, cooler heads prevailed and decided to reunite Absolution. And they get into Connex's faces, but Becky stops that. Paige stops that in their tracks and say, "Hey, no, you're not the tag team I was referring to." So first comes out Asuka. Okay, at least she's doing something. And obviously, whoever's next will be the newest member of the SmackDown Women's Division, and it's Kairi Sane. So I guess better, kick jump the next year's WrestleMania pirate theme, because Kairi Sane is the pirate princess, and assumption is that Kairi Sane will get her title shot at Mania in Tampa, Florida next year. Was it too obvious anyway. So Kairi Sane leaves behind Io Shirai on NXT, unfortunately, but Asuka, Io, and Kairi, they're all good friends, and Io Shirai even took to Twitter to wish them both luck, as she's referring to Kairi Sane will do great on SmackDown, and looks forward to the new team of Asuka and Kairi Sane defeating the Iconics for the women's tag team titles. So guess what's going to happen? Seriously, guess what's going to happen next? You got all these women in the ring, and a brawl breaks out. Becky quietly leaves, and guess what happens? They go to commercial. Guess what happens? We have an 8-woman tag team match. Because why not? You guys are already there, and you might as well. And the faces win, by the way. Ember Moon, Bayley, Asuka, and Kairi Sane, after delivering the insane elbow. First time shown on primetime TV. Onto, I believe it was Mandy Rose who received it, poor thing. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't Mandy Rose. I think it was Peyton Royce. But they got the win. But curious to see, when it comes to communication, both Asuka and Kairi Sane speak English. They do. With a heavy accent, but they speak English. And then you have, I guess, their manager, essentially, in Paige. So they've done this before, where there will be a communication barrier because neither side speaks the same language. And Paige, who's British, Kairi and Asuka are Japanese, so will they play that card is my question. And if done right too, so try to keep it PC a little bit, guys. So time for the main event, as Big O makes a great rendition of Big E's entrance for New Day's intro. And it was a great one, by the way. And they come out, they're tossing pancakes, and out come their opponents, Shinsuke, Rusev, and Cesaro. And it took a Trouble in Paradise stunner combo from Kofi Kingston and then to Kevin Owens to defeat Rusev for the win. Curious to see how much longer this can go between all three men, because I was so convinced that Kevin Owens would turn on them and right there on the spot begin a new faction with Cesaro, Rusev, and Shinsuke. But, Sheamus was not around, as he was out due to sickness, which I'll get into later. And nope, that trigger was not pulled. But still, the man was not used at WrestleMania, and that could have been easily his reason why to turn. In his hometown, no less. So the big announcement, that they were spoiling this all weekend, and not spoiling it, but they were announcing all weekend and throughout the night here on SmackDown, that Vince McMahon is going to announce the biggest acquisition ever in SmackDown history, and he was going to make the announcement himself. So it turns out that it was Elias. He comes down, and the fans knew as they got. It's almost as if they knew that the fans were going to give no reaction. Even though they started making chants in French, which unfortunately I did not understand or translate. And Elias caught wind of this and was going to perform anyway with Vince McMahon still in the ring. All of a sudden, you hear the theme song to Roman Reigns. and Roman makes his way to the ring. He brawls with Elias a little bit, and he tosses him out of the ring. McMahon gets into Roman's face, only to be Superman punched. But Elias catches him before McMahon is ever hitting the ground. Roman grabs the microphone and says, "SmackDown is now his yard." I think someone might take exception to that, looking at you, Mr. Kingston. And Roman leaves. And I guess he was either told by the referee or one of the cameramen saying, "Hey, we have like about a minute and a half left on air." So he runs back down and spears Elias. Poses a little bit more, and then they go off the air. So I kind of like how they communicate with each other between the cameraman, the referees, and sometimes the commentators, especially when it comes to how much time they have left on air. And they could improvise on the spot, similar to what Stephanie McMahon did, but that was like 5-6 minutes to fill. And she just ranted on and on about Ronda Rousey and Becky and Charlotte at the time. But it was, good on her to do what she did. But here it was, too easy in comparison. We just had to go back out there and beat somebody up. So, with all the names mentioned here, there were a few more that were mentioned on the WWE.com website of other names jumping from Raw to SmackDown and vice versa. So here are the names that jumped to SmackDown, and I'm going to include the ones I mentioned and the ones that did not make air. So we have Roman Reigns, Intercontinental Champion Finn Balor, Elias, Bayley, Ember Moon, and Kairi Sane. And for those that we did not see on air to jump, there was Lars Sullivan, officially a member of the SmackDown roster, which is a good idea because if you're going to portray him as a monster, and you got Braun Strowman, doesn't really make sense to have two monsters on one show, plus one being a face and the other one being a heel. And yes, I'm aware that Sullivan is not as tall or big, for lack of a better term, as Strowman, but he's still a dominating force. 205 Live, Buddy Murphy jumped over to SmackDown, and another faction was broken up, that being the Riot Squad, as Liv Morgan is now a member of SmackDown. The long-awaited breakup of Bobby Roode and Chad Gable have been broken up, as Gable is now part of SmackDown, along with Apollo Crews, former women's champion Mickie James, and both members of Heavy Machinery are now part of SmackDown. As mentioned before, AJ Styles, The Miz, Ricochet, Aleister Black, Hanson and Rowe, Andrade, Zelina Vega, Rey Mysterio, The Usos, Naomi, EC3, Lacey Evans, Eric Young, Cedric Alexander, all members of the Raw roster. So I guess they had more than enough time to fill in and mention their names on air. Now, there were many names added due to injuries or travel issues, allegedly. For example, Samoa Joe and the United States Championship, which, again, I'll later get into. But let's get into other news first, and I'm sure a lot have been wondering, particularly about Ronda Rousey. Now, according to a report from Fightful, Ronda was backstage when Raw was at the Barclays Center the day after WrestleMania, but was not used on television due to injuries and the already planned time off from the company that she already alluded to. And we all knew that for now, WrestleMania was going to be Rousey's swan song. And more details have come to surface about that. The report also mentioned that it has stated that the WWE is hopeful that Rousey will return either later this year or sometime next year, but that Rousey has given, quote, the WWE no clear indication of her next move. Surgery took place on her hand, which apparently she was injured at WrestleMania earlier this week, as TMZ Sports has a photo of Rousey getting into an SUV as she was leaving the studios of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert on Wednesday. So the surgery had to have taken place either this past Monday or Tuesday. Maybe even over the weekend. But here, leaving the studios, getting into her SUV, and this this kind of goes against the report from FIFO first reported. That her TV appearances could be delayed a little more because of the surgery. But Rousey managed to squeeze it in anyway. And on Instagram, Rousey has shared that she will be taking an vacation, calling it an impregnation vacation. And that was this past Monday. She was shown wearing a cast on Wednesday. So it was there was no denial that there was a surgery performed. The question is when. So it had it been sometime after Barclays Monday Night Raw, and then this past week's Raw. So my best guess would be over the weekend. Rousey would confirm with ESPN after WrestleMania that she's kept no secret that she was taking time off to start a family, saying, but how do you go about doing that? I love this way more than I thought I would. So do you just keep going until you just happen to get pregnant? Or should you stop and just go try to get pregnant? Or is going and trying to get pregnant putting yourself on a spot, and then you're less likely to get pregnant? I've never had a baby before. This is Ronda Rousey's quote, not mine. And I don't know these kinds of things. So again, it was no secret. I believe Dave Meltzer was, or one of the first ones to report this, that after Mania, indeed, Ronda Rousey will be taking time off away from the WWE, even though she has about another year and a half left on the contract. But I guess able to negotiate some, a huge chunk of that contract to be taken off. Maybe still while still getting paid. Maybe not. Who knows the exact details. But she's taking a break to start a family. I believe Ronda is 36 years old. Still very young. And I guess doesn't want to wait that much longer to be in her 40s, late 40s. Not that she can't, but she's a very active and physical competitor. And even while training, someone can get injured. And depending on what kind of injury, it'll prevent you from, something as simple as raising your arm over your head, because a shoulder injury is preventing that, with or without surgery. And I would hate to use this as an example, but it's happened where beyond their control, women have been injured severely to a point where physically they've recovered, but because of the damage received, they unfortunately cannot have any children. And I've heard that story many times. Anywhere from falling down the stairs, a flight of staircase, and tripping on ice, or car accidents, and it's really sad. And I'm not trying to wish any ill or jinx Ronda Rousey's plans here, but I don't blame her. I mean, she can't fight forever, as much as the fans would chant that, although I don't think they ever chanted that during one of her matches. But she had to have known at some point, even if she would have her undefeated streak broken in UFC, she had to have known at some point, and at that time she was already married, to eventually stop what she's doing to start a family. And there have been well-known names that have done that. There's Misha Tate. There's that chick, Rachel, she's the Hawaiian chick. I can't pronounce her last name, but there's Rachel. Just plain old Rachel. There's someone else that escapes my mind right now, but there have been plenty of good examples that these fighters in their prime take time off, start a family, and if anything, compared to the schedule to pro wrestling, these MMA fighters spend more time at home than they do on the road, and only really travel to said city or location where they can have their next match. They can train at home. A lot of them actually own their own gyms and train there. That's not too far away from home. Some even take their children to the training facility. So it's a little bit easier now that Rousey is in the WWE. And after the first few months, let's say when the baby's born, probably won't travel right away. And she may or may not already begin making TV appearances a couple of months after. But I think the suggestive timeline is maybe 6 months post-birth that you could travel around the way they would normally do. But either way, I'm not faulting Ronda at all. It's been no secret. More people, I believe, even denied or just didn't want to believe this story. Like, why would she leave? Blah, blah, blah. Like, well, obviously you don't have the same mind frame that Ronda does about wanting to start a family. And it won't be easy as you get older. I mean, I don't have any kids yet. But I know for a fact, and I do know people in my personal life that they would have one child at one point in their lives, and that's between their 20s and 30s, only for later on, let's say a decade, everything worked out great, but the delivery was so much more difficult. So you take that for what it's worth. Any of you younglings wanting to start a family, and that's what you want in your life at this time, plan ahead. There's no turning back. When it was revealed that Sanity was breaking up, especially Eric Young heading over to Raw, Killian Dane took to Twitter and wished both Young and Alexander Wolf all the luck in the world, as they all seem to be moving away from their factions. Now, it's unknown as if Alexander Wolf will be staying or leaving the SmackDown brand. But it looks to be clear that Sanity indeed is no more. Alexander Wolf would tweet out to his tag team partners of Eric Young, as well as to Nikki Cross. He shared some screenshots from his notes application, where he went to show them a list of the many in-ring accomplishments that he's done so far with NXT and WWE. And he finished the note by thanking the SmackDown locker room and the fans in general who never stopped believing in him or Sanity. Later on, Pro Wrestling Sheets was reporting that Wolf is still under contract and, quote, might be moving back to NXT. Boy, don't you wish some of these guys that I ranted about not having any TV time, but would have streaming service time, I guess, for lack of a better term. But you won't know that till a month later. To have the option to go back to NXT, or at least, hey, am I being used on Raw or SmackDown? All right, so you mind if I go to NXT this week and work just to be somewhat relevant a little bit? Got to pay the bills. Got to make wife and or husband happy. Feed the kids. Mortgage, feed the ducks, smell the roses. Got to do something. Any more serious side of things, it was confirmed by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations concluding the investigation onto the mysterious death of Brian Christopher, the son of Jerry the King Lawler, saying that our investigation has concluded and all the findings have been turned over to the District Attorney's Office of Mark Davidson. They will have to, everyone will have to refer to questions to his office. This coming from lead investigator of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigations, Mr. McAllister. Well, as of this time, it's currently unknown when the results of the investigation will be made public. But the story here is that Brian Christopher, passed away in the Hardin County prison facility back in July of last year. It was originally ruled as a suicide, for those who don't remember, by way of hanging. But many almost immediately speculated that the tragedy didn't add up, wasn't making any sense, including photos of Brian's neck and conflicting reports of other jailhouse fights involving him and other inmates, and possibly deputies. And the suspicion as to why he was placed in the side of the building where the jail cells were, and the surveillance cameras were not operating yet. And yes, the building itself was under renovations, but that's a huge flaw. I mean, huge flaw. And I think I mentioned it here. I shared a story where I was working security. And that's only because, for one of the main reasons, the building was in operations, just not fully staffed it yet. It was still under construction. And the side of the building that was used as actual work, actual employment, that's where security was always stationed. Everything else, because of safety concerns, because it is under construction, security was not allowed, or unless you had proper clearance. That was only with the construction workers and the owners of the building. They'll be given hard hats and all that and walk around as they see fit. Eventually, surveillance cameras were installed, but until then, the building was fully staffed with security. There was at least one officer to each corner, each entrance. And after the cameras were in play, then the third company that provided the security, would physically remove a number of officers because, well, we got cameras here now, and really the remaining ones would just rotate or patrol. And if they miss anything, well, at least it'll be caught on camera. In short, all bases were covered. When I heard that first time around, not only didn't make any sense, someone is trying to cover their tracks. That's just my opinion. Luke Harper, who returned for the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and also made an appearance in the most recent episodes of Worlds Collide on the network. If no one's having a chance to see that yet, I only saw the first episode. There are a two-part, 2-day episodes. I get to see the second one. But this carnation of Worlds Collide is everyone's involved: NXT, NXT UK, 205 Live, Raw, and Smackdown. So it's a great watch. I would assume the second day is just as good, and I recommend anyone to watch it. But Luke Harper announced that he's officially requested his release from the WWE and has put out a statement via Twitter saying, "I have requested a release from WWE. The past 6 years have been simply an amazing journey around the world and back with lifelong friends and family. I am proud of all of it and proud to say I share the ring with my coworkers. This decision, as difficult as it was, feels right for myself and WWE. My goal in the future is to continue to grow as a performer and person and continue to make my family proud." He will conclude by saying, "Thank you from the top to the bottom of WWE. Thank you to the fans for all their undying support. Thank you, everyone." So Luke Harper has become one of the latest talents to request their release. Of course, not too long ago, we heard from Hideo Itami was one of the most recent ones to request for their release, and TJP, among others, and makes you wonder what exactly is going on. I mean, besides the fact that they don't have anything creative for them, but again, they have multiple platforms. If the complaint is from the talent that, well, I'm here and you got nothing for me, and I can't go out there to wrestle for about 5 minutes with anyone just to earn my pay. You guys have 205 Live, and I get, that's only reserved for cruiserweights. I get that. Have NXT, that apparently is an option now you can go back to if the reports about Alexander Wolf are to be believed. You got Main Event, but unfortunately, no one's going to know about your matches for like another month. And I know I'm beating that dead horse to the ground, but it just doesn't make any sense. You've had great talent. This is the most stacked roster they had in years. Way beyond the days of the debunked WCW and ECW. Since then, Ring of Honor has risen. To an extent, TNA or Impact Wrestling, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of their talent, mostly from Impact, jumped ship to WWE more because of financial security. WWE right now is the only one, at least in the States, that can provide that for anyone that can be impressive enough, not only to Vince, but to the creative team and producers and agents. So, according to the Wrestling Observer, Luke Harper's contract does not expire until November of 2019. However, WWE has the option to extend the contract an additional 6 months. So, due to the time that Harper spent injured on the sidelines, so basically the time you were away, they can automatically add that time back into your contract without you having no say in it whatsoever. I guess that's the way to, second time's the charm, to try to reestablish everything that's been put aside for you, to develop you, to put back the TV time that apparently they never used for you, and get back the investment, in so many words. Either Harper is not aware of this or didn't read the fine print, but it's not the first time that you would hear of a talent that wanted to resign or wanted to leave, but their contracts were extended, so even more time added for them not to appear anywhere else in any other company to continue performing and get some kind of income. I mean, sure, they'll be paid off the remaining contract, but not to its fullest benefit, where there's your pay-per-view payoffs, there's your merchandise payoff, among other things. That won't be included in the regular salary. So it's a bummer. But we shall see exactly what happens and what ends up with Luke Harper. Maybe, well, it's doubtful the way he had that speech already set up. It doesn't seem like he's going to change his mind anytime soon. And a bit of a lighter side of things. Let's talk some happy news. Drake Maverick. He and Renee Mitchell, who met during the 2017 Mae Young Classic, although they might have been dating way before that, they're going to tie the knot coming up in June. Announced so far has been Braun Strowman and EC3 to be their groomsmen. So kudos, congratulations, mazel tov to Drake Maverick and Renee Mitchell. John Polak of PostWrestling.com and Dave Meltzer are both reporting that Sasha Banks is scheduled to appear at the next pay-per-view of Money in the Bank for WWE. And here's where the reports kind of separate a little bit. According to Polak, officials are, quote, hopeful that Banks will change her mind about leaving the company after she was told to take a couple of weeks off after WrestleMania concluded, as they haven't seen or heard from Sasha Banks since that Sunday of WrestleMania. And Polak is saying that also reiterating her scheduled appearance on the upcoming pay-per-view is yet not set in stone. Unlike Bayley, who is moving to Smackdown after the draft, the plan for Sasha is that she'll remain under the Raw banner, thus obviously splitting up the tag team of Bayley and Sasha Banks. Polak goes on to say, there have been reports of backstage displeasure by both Bayley and Sasha Banks during WrestleMania, with Ryan Satin hearing from several sources that the two laid on the floor expressing their unhappiness. Now, I mentioned this last week as well. The visual of two grown women just laying on the ground like a spoiled brat, kicking and screaming that they just found out they're going to be taking away their favorite toys, in this case being their women's tag team championships. I'm not saying it didn't happen. It's just difficult to accept this. And if this was done, again, this according to Satin, this was said by multiple sources. One of them being that it was done when they laid on the floor outside their hotel rooms in the hallway. So there has to be footage of this, and it must be released soon to put the doubters to sleep, me included. In addition to that, Sasha has stopped following Vince McMahon and WWE on Twitter, and she has also canceled her post-WrestleMania appearances on a talk show, which was supposed to be for Wendy Williams. And that whole debacle just got worse as time went on. First, it was set for a family emergency, and it was canceled at the last minute, only to find out that Sasha Banks, her husband, Kalisto, and his wife were on vacation in the Caribbean. Yeah. But here's Dave Meltzer's side of things. His update on why Bayley and Sasha were upset as a result of the WrestleMania conclusion of their match. While many within the company knew about the planned title change, Sasha was not made aware that she and Bayley were about to lose them to the Iconics until the day of the show. While the team didn't know that they would drop the championships and move on to different brands during the draft, they did know that the tag team would be dissolving after WrestleMania. So there was no secret there. They knew they were breaking up. They just didn't know about being sent to separate brands. It was a combination of not getting the long title reign and their expectation and knowing that the team was quickly being dissolved that led to the negative reaction from both superstars. Sasha is currently on leave considering her options, but Meltzer also states that Banks was never scheduled to be on TV immediately after Mania, even if they were still advertised. Bayley was also upset, but has seemingly rolled along with the punches and the situation as she has been moved over to SmackDown. So it is one of those, me, I'll see it, I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing. I'm always of that impression, especially when it comes to heavy rumors. In this case, if Sasha's that upset and was given the option, you know what, take some time off, think about it. Hopefully you can be back by the time Money in the Bank comes around. And to make her happy, and considering how much change has taken place because of the draft, let her win Money in the Bank. Every single time she's been women's champion, Sasha has, less than a week, she's dropping the title. And I'm being nice by saying that usually it's the very next day. But less than a week, Sasha's always dropped the title to someone else. And okay, her tag team reign lasted a much, much longer time period. But that's because those titles were never defended. Except at WrestleMania when she freaking lost them. So if she's not dropping them the next night or the week later, on her first title defense or whichever title she's defending, she loses. This can't be no more than of a coincidence. What is going on with Sasha Banks and Creative? Or I dare say what's going on between Sasha Banks, Creative, and Vince McMahon that say, ha! Sasha Banks is winning a title, have her drop it the next night. Or tonight, matter of fact. Actually, have her defend in the false count anywhere and have it drop the championship right there at gorilla position before she even makes it out to the ring. I don't know, Renee Young, get down there and pin her. Just get that damn belt off of Sasha Banks. How can you not even slightly think along those lines? What is it about Sasha? What, is it her boss gimmick? If that's really what's bothering you, I'm pretty sure it's not. But if that's what's bothering you, just tell her, stop doing it. Andre the Giant, he was always referred to or called the boss. Well, that's because he called everybody the boss. In conversations with everyone, celebrities, other wrestlers, they'll try to mimic Andre the best they could, and they'll throw in their boss. There was a segment one time where Stephanie even pointed it out to Sasha. You're not the boss, I'm your boss kind of thing. And didn't stop her from not using that slogan, not to mention all the merchandise that she's been selling with the boss on it. I don't know. I really don't know how to take that. It just really doesn't make any sense. And I think I'm getting a headache from all this thinking. Ugh. But I'll definitely keep an eye on that story as time progresses, especially as we approach Money in the Bank. But I say let Sasha win the bank, the briefcase, cash in, say, SummerSlam or Survivor Series, and have a nice lengthy run until the next WrestleMania. It'll only make a little bit of sense, but I keep forgetting who I'm talking about. Atomic Revolution Wrestling has announced that former WWE and NXT superstar Adam Rose would have his final wrestling match for their promotion on Friday, June 14th in Cocoa, Florida. Adam Rose, who those who don't know, has announced his retirement a couple of months ago and will fulfill his remaining obligations and booking appearances all the way leading up to June 14th, which will be his final in-ring performance ever. There's yet to be an opponent named for Adam Rose, but he has previously announced his plans to retire from the Squared Circle. And there was an old Instagram post that I believe was reposted that Rose has been dealing with health issues not that long ago, and he thinks it's time to hang it up. Well, just want to say thank you, Adam Rose, for the good times, for your rosebuds, and your entourage parade, and pretty much helping others make their debuts much sooner than we remember, like Braun Strowman and Zelina Vega and Aiden English, among others, before they broke away and made a names for themselves. But yeah, it's really sad. I still remember fondly the ESPN story they had on Adam Rose and his son, who also was dealing with health issues at the time, shortly after being born, or I think might have been when he was born. So that's something to look up. Go back and look up again. It was a nice, well put together piece, and I was fortunate enough to run into him and say the very same thing. It was well done, and I hope things continue to be working out for him with WWE. But unfortunately, it was not. But either way, good luck, Adam Rose, and wherever you land your feet, I hope it's what makes you happy. So now let's talk about some injuries that were quite notable as far as certain people not appearing on TV this week on SmackDown and Raw in particular. Samoa Joe was set to appear this past week on Raw, but now he's scheduled to be appearing next week, or this coming episode of Monday Night Raw, as it was confirmed that he has made the switch over to Raw after being drafted from SmackDown. Joe was sick this past week and was pulled from appearing on either show as a result. But with Finn Balor taking the IC title over to SmackDown, fans weren't sure whether Joe's Raw status has been confirmed, which was true, even with the list I mentioned earlier on of confirmed names that were jumping back and forth. Samoa Joe was not one of them. But I think after he recovered a little bit from his sickness, some reports were saying it was the flu, and he got better enough to say, hey, I can go on Monday. And the announcement was made, still unconfirmed by WWE, but the impression is that once Joe appears on Raw unannounced, more than likely, that will be the confirming that he's been drafted to Raw. That's some good iced tea. Sheamus is dealing with a concussion, and this was believed to have happened at the April 9th SmackDown during the six-man tag team match taken on the New Day, as Sheamus, Cesaro, and Drew McIntyre were their opponents. And this is noteworthy for many things, because this was also the same match that Big E was injured and where Drew McIntyre mysteriously disappeared. And a lot of people were left scratching their heads. Why is McIntyre not in the match anymore? And yes, that's why Sheamus was not on SmackDown or Raw this week. And we already knew about Big E's injury. But then we segue into Daniel Bryan, dealing with some injuries concerned as well. He reportedly suffered an injury during the WrestleMania match, but for now, said injury is being kept under wraps for the time being. But again, Bryan was another one who did not appear at all, much less even mentioned as to what brand he'll be appearing in this week or next week. Either way, if it's a concussion, which many are thinking it might be, this is going to keep Bryan and Sheamus out for a little while longer. And Cesaro might be flying solo, or if not, maybe have a interchangeable team-ups with Rusev and Shinsuke. A couple of stories referring to trademarks, as WWE has filed to trademark WWE Stomping Grounds, which will more than likely be a show about production and exhibitions of pro wrestling events. And Ric Flair has filed for a trademark of King of Drip and founder of Swag. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. Knowing the founder of Swag, I can get. King of Drip, that can be taken in so many different ways, especially when Flair talks about his, kiss stealing, willing and dealing, and all that stuff with women. Of course, in character, not that he will do anything behind Fifi's back, his current wife. But he's been known to be more than just the dirtiest player. He's been known to be a player. So, we'll see if any of this shows up on WWE Shop as a T-shirt. I doubt it, but if Ric Flair himself filed for it, then he must be working on some kind of project. So, someone tried to post what was later confirmed to be a fake sex tape online via Snapchat that involved Lana and Rusev. I say tried because the account was neither hers or Rusev, and the tape did not actually show Lana or Rusev at all. Now, I have not seen said video, but a source in WWE confirmed to TMZ that it was not her nor her voice that was heard belonged to Lana. And something like this happened with Alexa Bliss a couple of years ago. Supposed leaked sex pictures of her with someone else that was later to be rumored to be Seth Rollins, of all people, because of their physiques were so similar. Alexa will go on to say that it was not her. It's not her. Stop asking, stop posting and all that stuff. And I was able to come across one of them, and you couldn't help but to, at first glance, first impressions, like, oh my God, this looks like Alexa Bliss. But after further inspection, you can see that this was really, really, really well done photoshopping. You got to have a keen eye for this. And it's very almost, well, I wouldn't say impossible, but it's very, very difficult to pull off a convincing Photoshop picture of any kind and sell it off as this is real. This really happened. And that the involving party can deny it all they want, even though the picture is very convincing. It would have to go through a lot of processing and procedures to prove otherwise. But this was very convincing. But no, it was not Alexa Bliss. It wasn't even her body. So there aren't any leaked photos of Alexa Bliss, much less a sex video involving Lana and Rusev. And so I gotta say, sorry fellas, for those who search for these kind of things. Nothing wrong with that, but I'm just saying, in particular, searches for specific people. In this case, no, there isn't any Lana or Rusev videos of any kind. The closest, and it's no secret, it's out there. Hell, I came across it by coincidence because I didn't know who she was at the time. But there was an old TV show on Cinemax called Banshee. And Lana made, this might have been one of her first TV acting debuts. And she's at a bar lounge type of establishment. And she's messing around with this guy playing pool. And the said guy was a, drug distributor. And Lana's character was interested. And they make it to the men's room. walk into one of the stalls, and you got the powdered drugs and boobs flying all over the place, and those boobs belong to Lana or C.J. Perry. And this is long before she met Rusev, long before she got involved with NXT or WWE. And supposedly there are, when a woman is wanting or trying to sign up with WWE, supposedly there's a procedure they go through and asking if there's any inappropriate but professionally done pictures and or videos of them online, such as a nude photo spread or an extreme X-rated video. And chances are, depending how bad it is, at least in WWE's mind, they probably won't hire them. Which is a complete 180 from the attitude / ruthless aggression era, where it was almost an annual thing. It was just a question of who would do or be in the next Playboy photo shoot. That was a WWE diva. Trish Stratus turned it down. Stacy Keibler turned it down, among other people. But, it's the world we live in now. Thankfully, there are laws in place where if you don't have consent or permission, not only to record whatever it is that you're doing behind closed doors and privacy, but you also need permission of the person who didn't record it to upload it online, especially if you're getting income out of it. How do you think the Pamela Anderson video was so successful? She sued, sure. They eventually settled because that tape made a lot of money. A lot of money. Probably not as popular now as it was back then, but, it was probably one of the first celebrity sex tapes out there. And a lot of people wanted to get their hands on it. And we all knew what happened to at least one individual from the pro wrestling business that was involved in a particular sex tape and what happened then. I don't know if all has been forgiven, but they got a settlement. Not a settlement. He won a case. And that company who denied everything shut down. So it's some real serious trouble we can get into. I will not even make any suggestions because I don't want anyone to turn around and say, well, JM said it. Like, well, no one's making you, forcing you, or stopping you from taking a smart device and record what you're doing. But yet be dumb enough to upload it anywhere. Like, forget sex tapes for a second. Who performs or conducts a criminal act, whether it's armed robbery or assault or whatever, and then be dumb enough to upload it to brag about, not realizing, okay, you committed a crime, it's online, we don't need to investigate who did it, even though it's still allegedly, until proven otherwise, and you can plead not guilty all you want, but you're on video, and all you need is your name. They got your identity. They got your description. Sometimes it takes someone to step forward. Oh, yeah, this person lives here. Oh, yeah, this person is my relative. And you're screwed because of performing and doing stupid shit like that. And I'm getting way off on a tangent here. Bobby Lashley spoke with Fightful about a potential match between himself and Brock Lesnar. And this is what he had to say. Lashley, who's still on the contract with Bellator, by the way, and Lesnar, which I'll get into right after this story, is still at least affiliated with UFC. So when asked about the two men meeting in a fight, a shoot fight, even a wrestling match, and giving the fans what they want, Lashley admitted that he did want to take on Lesnar. Wasn't clear whether it was in MMA or WWE, although there was that opportunity. And those couple of weeks that Leo Rush was trash-talking Lesnar, but nothing ever happened. There was no confrontation. At least we couldn't get that. But Lashley would say, I'm not going to say I wouldn't win. Of course, I would say I'm going to win. So if it's UFC, if it's Bellator, if it's WWE, the fans want to see it. I think the fans will love to see us just stand in front of each other. I think the buildup of me and Brock will be huge. And then just be able to go out there and do it. I don't care. I'm pretty sure Lashley's, when he said I don't care, meaning whatever it takes to get it done. And he's been saying this for the past year, pretty much since he's been back with WWE now, a full year. And no one from creative either didn't hear about it or just flat out ignored it. Or in the case of Miss McMahon, nobody wants to see that, pal. And I'm so sick and tired of that bullshit logic. I really am. Similar to, now, before anyone starts sending me hate comments, in no way can this be compared, the Bobby Lashley-Brock Lesnar potential match, in no way can it be compared to the Sting versus Undertaker match. More than likely, the Sting and Taker match is never going to happen because Sting could see 50 personal doctors and they could all clear him. And I don't believe he's ever had the surgery for his neck and back issues. And he said on multiple occasions in interviews and appearances that he feels great, that he can bump around now. But there's one force that we as the fans don't see all the time. We just hear about it. That WWE doctors will be the ones that prevent him from being cleared and step back into the ring. Now, the longer this drags out, and if and when the doctors, get their heads out of their asses and clear Sting like they did Daniel Bryan, and even he had multiple doctors clear him. So unless there's some lame-ass university where WWE doctors have gotten their degrees from, cannot match up to other, probably more experienced doctors in the same category, in the same level, in the same amount of experience to say, we WWE doctors agree with Daniel Bryan's or Sting's doctors in this case, and we concluded with the same results. The blood work match, these tests or exams came back positive, so we're going to clear Sting, or we're going to clear Daniel Bryan. Bryan took, 2-3 years to get cleared by WWE. Half of that time, Bryan has been cleared by his doctors. If and when WWE doctors clear Sting, it will be years from now. And by then, we don't know, and I'm not one to judge anyone on their physical capabilities at a certain age. In this case, Sting and Taker, they're not young men anymore. Taker wasn't even used at this year's WrestleMania. Sting made a cameo appearance at the Hall of Fame. Even if he just tease, and I've said this many times, just the visual of these two men face to face will be more than enough. And come up and you guys, they do this all the time. Come up with some bullshit excuse as to why it can never happen. And instead of maybe having them go one-on-one, they can team up. A one-on-one match now, today, currently, between Sting and Taker probably won't last more than 10, 15 minutes, and that's including entrances. But just like the Bobby Lashley and Brock Lesnar, the visual of these huge muscular men face to face, and they're pretty evenly matched. especially in the wrestling department, especially in the grappling department. I dare say in the strength department. Striking might be a little bit different. I think Lesnar might have a bit of advantage on that because of his reach. But Lashley has the better fight record. Sure, Lesnar won more championships in MMA, but between the two, if you want to consider who's the better fighter, and if you don't look at their credentials or their win and loss record, how other way can you determine who was the better fighter of the two? If not, have them go one-on-one in the ring or in the octagon cage or whatever Bellator calls it. I could scream at the highest tower, at the top of my lungs, and instead I get the cows coming home. But that's going to happen first, long before we ever get a Lashley versus Lesnar match, and definitely before we get a Sting versus Undertaker match. To that I say, well, at least we got 2K games for that. You can simulate it or play it yourself and see what comes out the winner. If you're still not satisfied, then I suggest best 2 out of 3 falls. Speaking of which, Dana White, president of UFC, has some things to say about Brock Lesnar and Daniel Cormier as far as Lesnar's involvement with UFC, saying that the Lesnar-Cormier rumors weren't true, that I had something done. That was never true. I've been talking about how that's the fight that Cormier wants. Brock Lesnar wants to come back. I don't know when and when we'll get it done. Daniel Cormier has done everything we've asked of him. He's been a great champion, and he's an incredible ambassador for the sport. If he wants Brock Lesnar's fight, why shouldn't he get the Brock Lesnar fight? He wants to fight Lesnar. I don't know when, but Lesnar lets me know when he's ready. So basically, and this is not the first time Dana White has said something to this degree about Lesnar, but Lesnar, on one hand, has Vince McMahon by the balls, and on the other is Dana White, and he has him by the balls. So long before Lesnar returned to the WWE, and I think this was back in 2014, he was done with UFC. Contract expired. There was no other scheduled or expected fights he was going to have with anyone. He was done and was going to make a part-time return to the WWE. After about nearly a year in, Lesnar will win his first title. And even then it was a joke because it wasn't as bad as it would be later on, but he only appeared when he wanted to. And now, as time went on, it got worse and worse. Well, when Brock wants to show up, he'll show up and defend the title. He'll show up on air. And Dana White, once again, enforcing the fact that, well, he's waiting on Brock to tell him to say, Dana, I want to fight now. I look at Vince. Aren't you the owner of the WWE and he signed a contract with your company? And forget about being an independent contractor or whatever. Put that bullshit aside. You're his boss. Forget about the creative team for now. But you allowed him to hold hostage a newly created championship that's barely 3 years old, more than half of which the time was never seen on television because this guy was holding it up north in Canada somewhere next to his polar bear trophies. Dana White, aren't you the president and have a lot of saying before your time is up with UFC after the merger or whatever that went on with the $4 billion deal with, who was that? IAmG or whatever? You still got time with the UFC. You have a lot of say. You have a lot of weight and a lot of pull in the company. You mean to tell me you can't turn around and say, Lesnar, tell me right now, do you want this fight or not for the title? Or I put you in a fight where the winner gets a shot at the title? Yes or no? Why not suspend him until he makes up his mind? Or cut his pay? I really doubt he's getting full payment from UFC because he's done absolutely nothing other than that cameo appearance after Daniel Cormier defeated Stipe Miocic for the UFC World Heavyweight title. And even that looked more staged than it was on Monday Night Raw. The ability that someone like a Brock Lesnar can tell the owners or presidents of a certain company to have them, to allow them to get their way done, my way or the highway kind of thing. That must have been a real lucrative and specially made up bullshit contract that he signed and still get paid for it. And on top of that, has outside sponsors paying him to do what exactly? I don't know. He's yet to appear on any John Jay's or whatever the hell sandwich company that is that he's always coming out with on his fighting shorts. But he has sponsors. I'm sure he saved up his money. I doubt he still has his private jet. He must have sold that off. That cost him $1 million. So I don't think he's that frugal. I don't think he's that cheap. Maybe he does know how to spend his money better than most of us. But this, among other things, is the reasons why I doubt he even cares of losing his fan base. My last-ditch effort was when they put the belt back on him at the event that took place in Parts Unknown. And with that, I was like, yeah, as far as he goes, Lesnar, and if and when they take the belt off of him and put it on someone that's worthy of it to appear every week on Raw, I don't give a shit. But that's on Vince. On the other side, with Dana White, I don't know why you even bother waiting for that phone call to come from Brock. Up until now, Daniel Cormier was nursing a few injuries, preventing him from defending the title. I'm not sure if he's cleared, but if he's good to go, give the rematch back to Stipe. Does he not deserve that? Fuck John Jones. No. John Jones has had more failed drug tests than he's had opportunities at the UFC championship, heavyweight or light heavyweight. And what's the message there? You're, well, not congratulating, but you're honoring a man who's failed each and every single drug test that he's been given for the past few years in a row while he's denying it. And essentially ruined at least one UFC pay-per-view that was in the books. And I believe that was supposed to be the match between he and Daniel Cormier. But eventually that title match ended up being Cormier and Miocic. So I guess the fans win there. But just like Lesnar, Jones has lost his fan base, and he doesn't care. Respectfully. John Cena may now join the cast of the Suicide Squad sequel, as Variety reported that Cena is in talks in joining the upcoming sequel, which will be written and directed by the recently rehired writer and director for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So now James Gunn is playing both sides, not to screw anybody, but similar to Joss Whedon, who gave up his mantle of the MCU and assisted directing the attempted DCEU with Justice League. Yeah, we all know how that turned out. But Cena is in talks. I'm just curious because I'm also a bit of a Hollywood buff myself. The scheduling around both movies because Gunn was, when he was fired, the script for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was already good to go. And when Disney fired him, there were talks about rewriting the whole darn thing. And that Batista was so upset, he was threatening to quit, even breaking his contract. So then it took a few months, but Gunn was eventually rehired by Disney. And Batista was very excited, obviously. But then the concern turned to, okay, but we're still using James Gunn's original script. We're not going to use the new one that's been written. No word exactly how much of the script was rewritten, but Batista's campaigning to use original James Gunn material. So that's still being played out. And Batista plays Drax, of course, in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But speaking of Batista and James Gunn, it's set in stone about James Gunn directing and writing the Suicide Squad sequel, which I believe will be called The Suicide Squad. And during the time away from Disney when he was fired, Batista was rumored to be talking with James Gunn about joining the cast and playing the role of Bane. I mean, we'll see what happens, but we have John Cena talking, or is in talks to play a character yet to be determined. And the rumors that have never been confirmed nor denied about Batista joining the cast of the Suicide Squad sequel. So, just imagine, I think the universe would implode because you got John Cena playing a DC character, a hero or villain, we don't know yet. James Gunn, who is now going to write and direct a DC movie, who just got done directing several Marvel movies, directing and writing. And now the possibility of another character in Marvel to jump ship, so to speak, that was Drax, and now going to be play Bane in Dave Bautista. How are these universes not imploding cinematically is unreal to me, but I think the little fan in me, the little boy in me is just like, I can't wait for this to happen and let it happen, please. But it would be the first time that specifically Cena and Batista, who basically broke away from the WWE scene for a while. Between the two, I think Batista broke away much more successfully than Cena has because he's still making frequent appearances. Cena is still trying to find his footing in Hollywood. But it'll be the first time that two wrestlers that broke away from the business, that gave acting a try, become successful, and now they may come together under the same movie banner, in this case being the Suicide Squad. See what happens, folks. Here's an updated story from months ago, let's just put it that way. But a trial date has been set for a lawsuit involving Randy Orton's tattoos that appear in all of the WWE 2K games. And that date will be April 27th of 2020. For those who don't know, Catherine Alexander brought the lawsuit against WWE and Take-Two Interactive Software Incorporated, along with 2K Games Incorporated, 2K Sports Incorporated, Visual Concept and Entertainment, Yucks Company Limited, and Yucks LA Incorporated, all involved with the development and creation of WWE 2K games. The lawsuit states that the original tattoo designs worn by Randy Orton in life and in the video games were designed by Mrs. Alexander and had not given any permission to any said parties to be used in the game, or the games, because there are quite a few. This kind of reminds me of the lawsuit similar. Now, I do not remember the man's name, but basically he's the man responsible for Mike Tyson's face tattoo. Mike Tyson has appeared in movies, TV shows, other photo shoots of sorts and things of that nature, where his face tattoo is clearly shown. And that the man who originally designed and marked Tyson with the ink was never given any royalties. Now, this came more so when Tyson made his appearance in the Hangover Part 2 movie, and the man was asking for royalty. This was quite some time ago, and I don't even know what the outcome was, or they're still debating about it or what have you. But it's a bit of a stretch because I have tattoos, and not that I've been publicly displaying them anywhere, but if you see, and I think I may mention this too here, but I'll say it again. If you remember or recognize the said tattoo on Randy Orton's back, that's from shoulder to shoulder, I literally copy that design and have it over my left shoulder. So it's not exactly placed the same as Randy Orton's, but I personally love the design so much that I threw it over my shoulder. And a lot of people liked it. Not many people asked where the idea came from, and I wouldn't mind telling them. But the one thing I wouldn't do is say, hey, I got Randy Orton's tattoo. Especially nowadays, like since I'm not doing any photo shoots anytime soon, and depending on the photographer, they may suggest, some makeup or just not take pictures of me with no shirts on because of reasons like this. It's the kind of world we live in, and not all tattoos are copyrighted, but if it's a original design that you won't find in any example books or magazines when you go to a tattoo artist parlor or whatever, then I would say, yeah, the creator would have a gripe. They would have some say. I say, I created this design for you specifically, and knowing who you are on TV all the time, millions of people are going to see this. And probably to my experience, I saw said tattoo on TV. Hell, there was even a T-shirt, the RKO T-shirt in red, but written in NWO lettering. I literally took the logo on the back, which was the tattoo version of Randy Orton's, took it to the tattoo parlor and say, hey, I want this tattoo like this over the shoulder. And the guy scanned it and had to scale it up a little bit. And now it's inked on my body for the rest of my life. So I could see how that could be a copyright issue, but this is why we go to filing offices where you trademark certain things, whether it's logos, phrases, or in this case, a design. Now, I don't know how much weight that would carry if Catherine Alexandra is expected to be victorious out of this. But I think it's only fair, protect what you create is where I'm getting at. The thumbnails that I create to post along with these JM reports, hey, don't get me wrong, I do get some help. I make a suggestion sometimes that I can't accomplish myself, and I reach out to a friend of mine and say, hey, you mind if you crop this up a little bit or do this and that with this piece? Sure. They send it back, and then I put the puzzle together, and bada bing, bada boom. And yeah, I'm starting to protect my creations, even though I'm using other copyrighted material. But, fair use is in play. That's all I gotta say. Dave Meltzer reported that Enzo Amore and Big Cass's status with Ring of Honor is, not exactly where people are expected to be. They're not calling themselves the free agents with a Z, and they were not at the Ring of Honor shows this past weekend in either Pittsburgh or Columbus, Ohio. They aren't booked for any future dates with the company, and that they are not currently factored into anything upcoming or any storylines as of right now. And there are no ideas or plans to bring them back anytime soon, at least to ROH, as the original concept was believed that they've had a deal with ROH and are expected to start making TV appearances, but Meltzer says otherwise. So my best guess would be if they are truly joining ROH and legit sign with them, they just want to get everything else moving forward, storyline-wise, finish up a few of them to get them anywhere involved, whether it's a tag team division or singles, but still compete as a team sometimes. It makes sense. It's almost like WrestleMania. You get to post WrestleMania, and then basically you hit the reset button, and now you got different angles, different feuds, different champions. I'm not sure exactly when ROH's reset button push would be, but That would be my best guess. And that eventually Big Cass and Enzo Amore, which I'm sure they'll change those names as well, but the free agents will start appearing on Ring of Honor. Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, and Baron Corbin, no surprise here, are to be the final opponents for the Shield's last match together in WWE. It will go down in Moline, Illinois tomorrow night, matter of fact, as a half-an-hour special on the WWE Network as the Shield's final bout in the WWE before Dean Ambrose leaves the company. Also scheduled Finn Balor to defend the Intercontinental Championship against yet-to-be-named challenger. And all of this goes down at 9:30 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night on the WWE Network. This should be my sponsor by now. But I guess this is the final appearance for Dean Ambrose. They tried this in Barclay a couple of weeks ago, or last week, matter of fact. But his final bow, his final send-off was done off the air. The official last appearance of Dean Ambrose on WWE TV was him being thrown through the announce table by Bobby Lashley. And the last visual we saw of Dean Ambrose was him being attended to by his wife, Renee Young. So, yeah. Ambrose is getting his best deserved proper send-off, even though it's on the network, but at least it's being recorded. At least it'll be available to be seen at any time you want. And it'll be shared, I'm sure, throughout social media after it happens. So, and it's live, by the way. This will be a live telecast of a house show in Moline, Illinois. Nice little town. Visited it maybe once in my life. Yeah, not so bad. Have a couple more stories before I wrap up here. It was revealed last week that Road Dogg officially stepped down from the lead writer position of Smackdown. And now new information has surfaced, and it's come out that the newly inquired Hall of Famer made the decision to resign from his role. This comes from Jeff Whalen of Raja.com. Road Dogg was heavily on the road during the show runs, but then also had to balance that time with spending hours at home on Skype in meetings with Vince McMahon. Road Dogg also had to be live in the meetings at the Stanford offices as well. But apparently cooler heads prevailed as Road Dogg will now be returning to the WWE. However, PW Insider is reporting that this is due to the newly minted Hall of Famer taking an extended break, quote unquote, from the company. After some time away, he will reconvene with the company and try to find a spot where he will fit in, as Road Dogg was not at TV tapings this week for Raw and or SmackDown, nor has there been a return date set. For Road Dogg, Jesse James, one of the newest members of the WWE Hall of Fame, inducted with the faction of D-Generation X. Finally, as I'm going really long for this JM Report edition, The Wrap, that's WRAP, is reporting All Elite's upcoming television deal will be a time buy, which means Time Warner isn't paying the company to air their programming, but instead AEW will be paying to be on a station. This is due to AEW needing the spotlight more than Turner needing a wrestling programming. This isn't an entirely new concept to combat sports, as TNA did the same thing with Fox Sports Net, and UFC's Ultimate Fighter was originally a time buy until it proved itself to be a hit. However, Dave Meltzer chimed in, and he's reporting that the story is false, saying time buy is false. It's the exact opposite. One of the reasons the deal has not been made yet is because of multi-bidders. So apparently, there are multiple networks that are in talks or interested in airing AEW programming eventually. My best guess would be that after Double or Nothing, there will be an official announcement made, as there's about a month left for that event to take place. Almost a month now. Wow. Next holiday. If AEW would debut on the Turner Networks, TBS or TNT, basically returning pro wrestling to the Turner Networks, I say it would be a great idea. They need this TV deal better than anything else right now. I think enough hype has been built. I dare say tension in a good way, where May cannot get here any quicker. Double or Nothing can't get here any quicker. Although there have been a handful of matches already announced, we don't know of any other surprises to appear. And I wouldn't fully rely on StarCast and say that, similar to WrestleCon, and handpick or take a wild guess, shot in the dark, to see who from there will make an appearance in ring for AEW on May 25th. So let's just wait and see, folks. I mean, I'm just as curious and eager as the next person is. And there are some, and I would hear bits and clips on YouTube of other podcasters like, well, and I'm tired of waiting. I'm done with this. All this, forgetting full well that you do know that they have a pay-per-view coming up. And I'm not saying that would make or break them. I think All In made them. Now it's time to follow up on that success and just not overdo it like WWE is doing now, with pay-per-views essentially every 3 weeks, twice a month sometimes. And just put all those haters and naysayers to rest after Double or Nothing, and hopefully never be denied ever again or doubted ever again. And once you get your TV deal with whomever it is, and hopefully it's a station that everyone can receive coast to coast, and just do your thing. You have a billionaire as a backup. I'm not saying do what Bischoff did and ask for millions of dollars of checks every freaking week to satisfy the needs of one particular person that hopefully they did not include creative control in their contracts. But to be smarter than that. You saw what happened with WCW and how their money was mishandled. Before him, and forget about creative, that's a whole different story. But money-wise, they were spilling out more money than they were taken in the long run. No, I wasn't there, but you can clearly see it when it comes to production and presentation. Not to mention the crowds kept getting smaller and smaller. So we can argue about that all day if you want, but the writing was on the wall for WCW. And I just hope where Cody Rhodes saw a lot of that growing up, when his father and for a short time his brother was there in WCW, and basically learn the rule of the trade, so to speak, and how it is exactly to run a successful pro wrestling company. So personally, I am waiting with anticipation for the TV deal itself with whomever it is. If it's once a week, maybe on a weekend, and have a different alternative. And I hope they are very successful TV-wise. It's obvious to say that they will be successful with Double or Nothing, as it's already sold out months in advance. I think, what was it? In half an hour, those tickets sold out. Last year, when there was no matches announced, when there's no roster announced. So you keep calling them a t-shirt company all you want, but I dare say that AEW will be very big, very successful. Not as WWE, but with time, there will be. Whether it was tongue-in-cheek that Triple H took shots at them during the Hall of Fame speech. Well, If anyone in AEW is listening to the sound of my voice, I say make Triple H eat his words and beat him at his own game. No pun intended. So with that said, hope everyone enjoyed this episode of the JM Report. Leave comments below. Subscribe to the Good Old JM channel if you haven't already. Follow me throughout social media. Leave a comment. Click that like button. Click on that little bell to be notified when the next Talking with JM episode or the next JM Report is up and running on YouTube. And as always, everyone, thank you for listening. Enjoy your extended Easter vacation. For those who are on spring break, those who are on vacation, out of town, and will have fun. Enjoy and return home safe. Till next time, it's Good Old JM. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your day.
Open my eyes, leave it all behind. So open your mind and realize that your beautiful world